Imagine this. You're standing in your family's backyard, surrounded by 45 guests, watching your father hand your brother the keys to a $128,000 Porsche. Then he turns to you and gives you a bus pass. "Work harder," he says, loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd laughs. Would you stay silent? Or would you walk away and never look back? That bus pass was supposed to humiliate me. Instead, it became the reason I left home with nothing and returned 2 years later in a Rolls-Royce. The same Rolls-Royce my brother's Porsche would crash into at 78 miles per hour while my father watched in horror. Hey everyone, I'm Brianna, 28 years old, and this is the story of how my family underestimated me for the last time. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. June 18th, 2022. That date is burned into my memory like a brand. My brother Derek was turning 26, and my father had transformed our family home in Scottsdale into what looked like a corporate gala. 45 guests filled the backyard, business partners from Dad's chain of used car dealerships, family friends who'd known us since childhood, senior employees who laughed a little too hard at my father's jokes. The caterer alone must have cost $15,000. I stood near the bar in a modest navy dress I'd bought on sale, watching the crowd mingle around the pool. My mother floated between groups, playing the perfect hostess. Derek held court near the fountain, already 3 glasses of champagne deep, accepting congratulations for simply existing another year. At 7:30 p.m., my father clinked his glass. "Everyone, if I could have your attention." The crowd gathered near the side lawn, where a large object sat beneath a white silk cover. My stomach tightened. I knew what was coming. I'd overheard the phone calls, seen the brochures hidden in Dad's office. "Derek," my father said, his voice carrying across the yard. "You are the future of the Gallagher name. You've shown dedication, promise, and the kind of drive that will take our family business to the next level." I almost laughed. Derek hadn't completed a single project at the dealership in 3 years. His dedication consisted of showing up after 11 and leaving before 4. Dad pulled the silk cover away. A Porsche 911 Carrera S. Carmine red. The kind of red that screams money. The crowd erupted, applause, whistles. Derek embraced our father while cameras flashed. "This," Dad announced, "is a reward for the man who will inherit the Gallagher legacy. You've earned it, son." $128,000. That's what that car cost. I knew because I'd processed the dealership's quarterly reports. I knew every number in that business, numbers Derek had never bothered to learn. I stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching my glass of orange juice, waiting for my turn. My father's eyes found me in the crowd. "Brianna, come here." 45 faces turned toward me. I walked forward, heart hammering against my ribs, allowing myself one small, foolish moment of hope. Maybe he'd finally seen my work. Maybe the spreadsheets I'd reorganized, the supplier contracts I'd renegotiated, the inventory system I'd rebuilt from scratch. Maybe it had all registered. Dad reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. "For you," he said. I opened it in front of everyone. Inside was a Valley Metro bus pass, 12 months of unlimited rides. The receipt was still attached, $660. The silence lasted maybe 2 seconds, but it stretched into eternity. Then my father spoke, loud enough for every guest to hear. "Work harder, Brianna. Then you'll have a car. Men need vehicles to do business. Women need to learn the value of saving." Someone chuckled. Then someone else. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the crowd. Derek grinned, dangling his new Porsche keys. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I looked at my father. At the man who'd watched me graduate valedictorian, who'd skipped my college ceremony for a golf outing with Derek, who'd rejected my application for a management position because customers don't want to talk to women about cars. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I simply nodded, slipped the bus pass into my purse, and walked away from the party. Behind me, the celebration resumed. Music, laughter, the pop of another champagne cork. I sat in my childhood bedroom that night, staring at that bus pass, and made a decision that would change everything. I was done waiting to be seen. The bus pass wasn't the beginning, it was just the final confirmation of something I'd known for years. May 2018. I graduated summa cum laude from Arizona State University with a 3.94 GPA in business administration. I was 22, standing on that stage in my cap and gown, scanning the crowd for my family. My mother was there, crying happy tears. My father's seat was empty. Later, I learned he'd taken Derek to a PGA tournament in Scottsdale. Business networking, he'd called it. Derek was 20 at the time and had just failed his third attempt at community college. August 2019. I applied for the assistant manager position at our Tempe dealership. I'd been working there for a year, had memorized every vehicle in inventory, knew our profit margins by heart. Dad called me into his office. Brianna, customers don't want to discuss cars with a woman. It's not personal, it's just how the industry works. He gave the position to a 23-year-old man who'd been there 6 months, January 2020. Derek was appointed Director of Development at the flagship dealership. His salary, $180,000 per year. No KPIs, no deliverables, no accountability. I remained a back-office administrator earning $42,000 annually, processing the paperwork for deals I could have closed myself. For 4 years, I watched my brother collect paychecks for phantom work while I documented every inefficiency, every missed opportunity, every dollar left on the table. I kept copies of everything: quarterly reports, performance reviews, my own contributions buried in footnotes. I thought if I just worked harder, if I just proved myself beyond any doubt, my father would eventually see my value. The bus pass taught me the truth. He never would. Some people don't want to see. And you can't force open eyes that are deliberately closed. The night after Derek's party, I sat on my bed with my laptop open and that bus pass on the nightstand. I pulled up my bank account, 23,847 D2As. 4 years of saving on a $42,000 salary while living at home, paying minimal rent because my father believed daughters shouldn't be financially independent until marriage. I opened a job search website and typed Los Angeles business operations. Los Angeles was far enough. A different state, a different world. Somewhere no one knew the Gallagher name, where I could build something that was entirely mine. I spent 3 hours researching apartments, cost of living, job markets. By 2 a.m., I had a plan. By 3 a.m., I had a one-way flight booked for the following morning. I wrote a letter to my mother and left it on the kitchen counter. Mom, I love you, but I can't keep living in a house where I'm not considered a person. Please don't try to bring me back. I'll call when I'm settled. At 6:15 a.m., I zipped up a single suitcase. I took my laptop, my documents, and my diploma. I left behind everything else. The bedroom I'd slept in for 26 years, the family photos where I always stood at the edge, the hope that my father would change. The Uber driver asked if I was going on vacation. No, I said, watching the Scottsdale sunrise through the window. I'm going home. I didn't know what Los Angeles would bring. I only knew Phoenix had nothing left for me. Los Angeles didn't care about my father's opinions. The city swallowed me whole in the best possible way. I found a studio apartment in Koreatown. 450 square feet, a hot plate instead of a stove, street noise that never stopped. Rent, one on $450 per month, first and last required upfront. After the deposit, furniture from a thrift store, and basic supplies, my savings dropped to $18,200. I did the math obsessively. 8 months. That's how long I could survive without income if I ate ramen and walked everywhere. 8 months to build a new life or crawl back to Phoenix in defeat. The first week I sent out 47 job applications. marketing coordinator, operations analyst, executive assistant. Anything that might use my degree. 3 interviews, 0 offers. You're overqualified, one hiring manager told me. You don't have enough experience, said another. We're looking for someone with more presence, a third explained, glancing at my sensible interview outfit. By August, my savings had dropped to $15,600. I started picking up gig work, data entry, freelance spreadsheet projects, anything that paid. Some nights I made $40. Some nights I made nothing. I ate a lot of rice and beans. I learned which grocery stores discounted produce at 9 p.m. I discovered that the public library had free Wi-Fi and air conditioning. Every Sunday night, I checked my bank balance and calculated how many weeks I had left. But I never called home. Not once. My mother texted occasionally, "Are you okay? Dad is asking about you." I didn't respond to the second part. Dad wasn't asking because he cared. He was asking because my absence was inconvenient. Who else would organize his files? The city was hard, but it was honest. And that was more than Phoenix had ever given me. September 2022. 11 weeks into my Los Angeles experiment, I found the listing that would change everything. Meridian Motors, operations intern, electric vehicle startup seeking detail-oriented candidate with automotive industry knowledge, salary, $55,000 year, growth potential for exceptional performers. I almost scrolled past it. Intern. At 26, after 4 years of professional experience, the title stung. But the salary was higher than what I'd earned in Phoenix. And something about the company description caught my attention. We believe talent has no gender, no pedigree, no predetermined ceiling. I applied at 11:47 p.m. and received an interview request by 8 a.m. The process was brutal. 4 rounds over 3 weeks, skills assessments, case studies, panel interviews with department heads who asked questions my father had never thought to ask. What would you change about our supply chain? How would you measure operational efficiency? What's your philosophy on cross-functional communication? The final round was with the CEO himself. Marcus Webb was 62 years old, a self-made billionaire who'd built his fortune in sustainable energy before pivoting to electric vehicles. He had a reputation for being impossible to impress. He reviewed my resume for exactly 12 seconds before looking up. Why did you leave Phoenix? I considered a diplomatic answer. Instead, I told the truth. Because my family doesn't believe women can work in the automotive industry. My father gave my brother a $128,000 Porsche and gave me a bus pass. I decided to prove him wrong somewhere else. Marcus was silent for 10 seconds. I counted. Then he leaned back in his chair. I started Meridian Motors because no one believed a black man could build an electric car company. You're hired. You have 90 days to prove you belong here. 90 days. That was my window. I understood the stakes with perfect clarity. If I failed at Meridian Motors, my savings would last maybe 4 more months. After that, I'd have 2 choices. Find another entry-level job in a city that had already rejected me 47 times, or return to Phoenix and prove my father right. Neither option was acceptable. So I became the first person in the office and the last to leave. I arrived at 6:30 a.m. and rarely left before 10 p.m. I learned every system, memorized every process, identified every inefficiency. The company was growing fast, too fast. Their operations infrastructure couldn't keep up with demand. Delivery timelines were slipping. Supplier relationships were fraying. Nobody had time to fix the foundational problems because everyone was too busy fighting fires. I started fixing them anyway. I rebuilt the inventory tracking system during my lunch breaks. I created automated reporting templates on weekends. I documented processes that existed only in people's heads and turned them into trainable procedures. I kept a journal during those 90 days. One entry still stands out. October 15th, 2022. This isn't about revenge. This is about proving that my value doesn't depend on whether my father sees it. I'm not working to spite him, I'm working to save myself. By November, I'd identified a flaw in our supplier contracts that was costing the company $28,000 per month. I brought it to my supervisor with a proposed solution. She brought it to the CFO. The CFO brought it to Marcus Webb. 3 days later, Marcus called me into his office. My 90-day review was scheduled for December 1st. It was only November 15th. I walked into that meeting not knowing if I was about to be promoted or fired. Marcus Webb didn't waste time on small talk. "Sit down, Brianna." I sat. His office overlooked downtown Los Angeles, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a city that still felt foreign to me. On his desk was a folder with my name on it. "Your supervisor submitted her evaluation early," he said. "You've exceeded your KPIs by 147% in 3 months." "I just did my job, sir." "No." He opened the folder. "You did 3 people's jobs. You reduced our delivery timeline by 23%. You identified a contract flaw that saves us $340,000 annually. You built a reporting system that eliminates 15 hours of manual work per week." He looked up. "That's not just doing your job. That's redefining what the job should be." I didn't know what to say. 4 years at my father's dealership, and the most recognition I'd ever received was a form letter thanking me for continued service. "I'm promoting you," Marcus continued. "Head of operations. Salary, $95,000. You'll report directly to our COO." He paused. "You start next month." The number hit me like a physical force. $95,000. More than double what I'd earned in Phoenix. More than half of what Derek made for doing nothing. "Thank you," I managed. "I won't let you down." Marcus leaned forward. "I don't give opportunities based on potential, Brianna. I give them based on results. You've earned this. Now earn what comes next." I walked out of that office and stood in the hallway for a full minute, letting it sink in. For the first time in my life, someone had looked at my work instead of my gender. Someone had measured my output instead of my relationship to a family name. It felt like breathing after years underwater. January 2023, 6 months since I'd left Phoenix. The text from my mother came at 7:42 a.m. while I was reviewing quarterly projections at my new desk, a real desk now, in a real office, with my name on a placard outside the door. "Your father is asking if you're coming home for the holidays. Derek wants to show you his new car upgrades." I stared at the message for a long moment. New car upgrades. Of course. The Porsche wasn't enough. It never would be. I didn't respond. 3 hours later, a message from Derek appeared. The first direct communication from my brother in 6 months. "Hey sis, heard you're working at some electric car company or whatever? Sales, right? Let me know if you need money. I can help." I screenshot the message and saved it to a folder I'd labeled documentation. I wasn't sure why. It just felt important to keep a record. Another message followed an hour later. "Still mad about the birthday thing? It was just a joke. Dad says you're too sensitive." Then another. "Whatever. Keep riding the bus, I guess." I put my phone in my drawer and returned to work. That night, alone in my studio apartment, I allowed myself to feel the anger I'd been suppressing. Not the explosive kind. I'd never been prone to outbursts. The quiet kind. The kind that settles into your bones and becomes fuel. Derek thought I was in sales. He assumed I was answering phones, fetching coffee, doing the kind of work he believed women were suited for. He had no idea I was managing operations for a company valued at $85 million and climbing. And I wasn't going to tell him, not yet. Some revelations are better delivered in person. April 2023. The conference room on the 42nd floor was standing room only. Marcus Webb stood at the head of the table, flanked by representatives from 3 venture capital firms. I sat along the wall with the other department heads, watching history unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced, "Meridian Motors has officially closed our Series B funding round. $85 million. Valuation, $180 million. Applause erupted. I clapped along with everyone else, my mind already calculating what this meant for the company's trajectory: expanded production, new markets, accelerated R&D. After the meeting, Marcus's assistant found me in the hallway. "He wants to see you. Now." I walked into his office to find Marcus and our CFO, Patricia Holloway, waiting with documents spread across the conference table. "Close the door," Marcus said. I did. "Brianna, you've been here 9 months. In that time, you've transformed our operations infrastructure. Patricia's projections show your initiatives will save us $4.2 million over the next 3 years. He slid a document toward me. "I want you to become our Chief Operating Officer." I picked up the document. The title page read, Executive Employment Agreement, Brianna Gallagher, COO. "There's more," Patricia added. 8% equity stake, vesting over 4 years. At current valuation, that's $14.4 million on paper. The numbers blurred. I had to read them twice. "I don't give equity lightly," Marcus said. "This isn't a gift, it's an investment. I'm betting on you because the data says you're worth betting on." I looked at the signature line at the bottom of the page. My hand was steady as I picked up the pen. "I won't let you down," I said. "I know," Marcus replied. "That's why you're sitting here." I signed my name and watched my future change shape. May 2023. My mother's voice trembled through the phone. "Brianna, your father's blood pressure is dangerously high. The doctor says he needs to reduce stress. Can you please come home, just for a visit?" I was sitting in my new corner office watching the Los Angeles sunset paint the skyline orange. The contrast between this moment and the life I'd left felt almost surreal. "Mom," I said carefully, "has Dad ever asked about me? Actually asked?" Silence. Then, "You know how he is, sweetheart. He's not good at expressing. He's very good at expressing things to Derek." More silence. "He's still your father," she finally said. "Family is family." I thought about the bus pass, the skipped graduation, the rejected promotion, the years of being invisible in my own home. "I love you, Mom, but I can't come back to a place where I'm not considered a person. Brianna, I'll send you money if you need it, for medical bills, for anything, but it'll come from my account, not through Dad." The call ended with my mother crying softly and me staring at the city lights below. The next morning, I transferred $5,000 to her personal account, an account I knew my father didn't monitor. I attached a note. "For whatever you need, no strings. Love, Bree." She texted back a simple "thank you, sweetheart," and didn't mention my father again. I understood something that day. Love and boundaries aren't opposites. I could love my mother and still refuse to participate in a family system that had never valued me. Some people wait their whole lives for permission to protect themselves. I was done waiting. But I also knew, somewhere in the back of my mind, that Phoenix wasn't finished with me yet. I know many of you watching have felt this same thing, being overlooked by family, treated unfairly for reasons beyond your control. If this story is resonating with you, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to leave somewhere to find your own worth? And if you want to know what happened when my brother crashed into my Rolls-Royce, keep watching. November 2023. 18 months since I'd arrived in Los Angeles with $23,000 and a broken heart. The Series C announcement came on a Tuesday morning. Goldman Sachs and Sequoia Capital had led the round, $120 million in new funding. Meridian Motors was now valued at $340 million. I did the math before anyone had to tell me. My 8% stake, $27.2 million on paper. After 2 years of vesting, I'd already earned 4%, $13.6 million that was legally mine, convertible to cash if I ever chose to leave. Elena Vasquez, our corporate counsel, called me into her office that afternoon. She was 34, sharp as a scalpel, and had become something like a mentor over the past year. Brianna, I need you to understand something. She slid a document across her desk, the SEC Form D filing that would make our funding round public record. This filing goes live in 72 hours. Your name is on it. Your equity stake is on it. Anyone with an internet connection will be able to verify that you're one of the wealthiest people under 30 that I personally know. I stared at the document, my name in black and white, attached to numbers that still felt imaginary. What are you going to do with this? Elena asked. What do you mean? I mean, she leaned back. You've told me about your family, about Phoenix, about the brother with the Porsche and the father with the opinions. This filing is proof, undeniable public legal proof of everything you've built. I thought about Derek's text. Keep riding the bus, I guess. I'm not going to do anything, I said. Not yet. The right moment will present itself. Elena smiled. In my experience, it usually does. She had no idea how right she would be. January 2024. I bought my first car. I could have chosen anything. A sensible Tesla, a practical BMW, something that whispered success without shouting it. Instead, I walked into a Rolls-Royce dealership in Beverly Hills and pointed at a Phantom E8. The salesman's expression flickered, just for a moment, when he saw me. A young woman in business casual, no jewelry, no designer bag. I watched him calculate whether I was worth his time. That particular model is $485,000, he said carefully. Perhaps I could show you something more. I'll take it, I said. Navy blue exterior, cream interior, and I'd like a custom plate. He blinked. A custom plate? Earned. I paid in cash. Well, a wire transfer, but the effect was the same. The salesman's demeanor shifted so dramatically that I almost laughed. My father had always said Rolls-Royce was the car of the truly successful. Not flashy like a Ferrari, he'd lectured Derek once, back when I was still invisible in the corner. Understated, dignified, the car of people who don't need to prove anything because their success speaks for itself. I hadn't bought the Phantom to prove anything to him. I'd bought it to prove something to myself. But I'd be lying if I said a small part of me didn't wonder what his face would look like if he ever saw it. I didn't post photos on social media. I didn't tell anyone except Marcus and Elena. The car sat in my parking garage, a secret made of leather and steel, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Some victories are better savored in private, others are better delivered in person. I didn't know yet which category this one would fall into. February 2024. Marcus called an executive meeting to discuss expansion. 5 new cities this year, he announced, clicking through the presentation. Seattle, Denver, Austin, Miami. He paused on the final slide. And Phoenix. My stomach tightened. The Arizona market is underserved for premium electric vehicles, Marcus continued. We've identified several acquisition targets, existing dealerships we can convert to Meridian showrooms. Brianna, you know that market. I want you to lead the Phoenix expansion. 20 faces turned toward me. I felt the weight of their expectation. Phoenix is complicated for me, I said carefully. I know. Marcus's expression was unreadable. That's exactly why you should be the one to go. After the meeting, he caught me in the hallway. You're not going there for revenge, he said quietly. You're going there to prove, to yourself, that you've moved past it. That Phoenix is just another market, just another city where Meridian Motors will succeed. And if I run into my family? Then you'll handle it the way you handle everything else, with facts, with professionalism, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly what she's worth. I reviewed the acquisition targets that night. One name jumped out immediately. A mid-sized dealership on Camelback Road, 3 blocks from my father's flagship location. The irony wasn't lost on me. I scheduled the signing for March 15th. The purchase price was $4.2 million, pocket change for a company valued at $340 million, but significant enough to make local news. I didn't tell my family I was coming. There was no reason to. This was business, not a reunion. But as I planned the trip, I couldn't shake the feeling that Phoenix had unfinished business with me too. March 14th, 2024. The night before my return to Phoenix. I packed methodically. The acquisition documents, my COO credentials, the notarized copy of my equity agreement. Everything that proved, in black and white, exactly who I had become. The drive from Los Angeles to Phoenix was 370 miles, roughly 5.5 hours through the desert. I could have flown. I chose to drive. There was something poetic about returning in the Rolls-Royce. The last time I'd left Phoenix, I'd been in an Uber, watching the sunrise through tear-blurred eyes, clutching a suitcase, and $23,000 in savings. Now I'd be arriving in a $485,000 car with $27 million to my name and a $4.2 million deal to close. I called Elena before I left. "The signing is at 3 p.m. tomorrow," she confirmed. "Morrison and Associates, downtown Phoenix. I'll be on standby if you need legal support." "I shouldn't need it. This is straightforward." "Brianna." Her voice softened. "Are you okay? Going back there?" I considered the question. Was I okay? I'd spent 2 years building a life that had nothing to do with my father's approval. I'd proven everything I needed to prove. Phoenix was just geography now. Just a dot on a map where I happened to have been born. "I'm fine," I said. "This is just business. Call me if it becomes anything else." I hung up and looked at the Rolls-Royce waiting in my garage. The custom plate gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Earned. Tomorrow, I would drive that car into Phoenix. I would close my deal. I would leave. Simple, professional, unemotional. I had no way of knowing that fate had scheduled a different kind of meeting entirely. March 15th, 2024. Phoenix. I woke at 5:30 a.m. in my suite at the Phoenician, a resort I could never have afforded 2 years ago. The desert sun was already warming the terracotta tiles outside my window. I dressed carefully, a navy Armani suit, $3,200, tailored to fit perfectly, minimal jewelry, practical heels, the kind of outfit that said I belong in boardrooms without trying too hard. Breakfast was quiet. I reviewed the acquisition documents one final time, confirming every clause, every number, every signature line. The deal was clean. The lawyers had done their work. All that remained was the signing. At 1:30 p.m., I walked to the parking garage and slid into the Rolls-Royce. The leather seats embraced me. The engine purred to life with that distinctive whisper that only a phantom produces. I pulled out of the garage and onto Camelback Road, heading toward downtown. The Arizona sun blazed overhead. I put on my sunglasses and turned on the jazz station I'd grown to love during late nights at the office. Miles Davis, kind of blue. The city looked exactly as I remembered it. The same strip malls, the same palm trees, the same mountains rising in the distance. But I was different. Everything about me was different. I checked the clock. 2:15 p.m., 45 minutes until my meeting. Plenty of time. The traffic light ahead turned yellow, then red. I eased the Rolls-Royce to a stop at the intersection of Camelback and 24th Street, humming along to the music. Behind me, I heard an engine roar, the aggressive, unmistakable growl of a sports car pushing too fast. I glanced in my rearview mirror. A red Porsche was approaching. Fast. Too fast. And it wasn't slowing down. The impact came before I could react. Metal screamed against metal. My body jerked forward against the seatbelt. The Rolls-Royce shuddered, lurched, and finally stopped. For a moment, everything was silent except for the hiss of a damaged engine, not mine, and the distant honking of cars that had witnessed the collision. I sat very still, taking inventory. Neck, fine. Back, fine. Hands, shaking slightly, but uninjured. The Phantom's safety systems had done their job. I looked in the rearview mirror. The front end of a red Porsche was crumpled against my rear bumper. The hood had buckled upward. Airbags had deployed inside the cabin. Steam, or smoke, rose from the destroyed engine. A Porsche 911 Carrera S Carmine Red. I knew that color. I'd watched it unveiled at a birthday party 22 months ago. My hands stopped shaking. Something cold and calm settled over me. I opened my door and stepped out onto the asphalt. The Phoenix sun beat down on my shoulders. Around us, cars had stopped. People were getting out, phones already raised. I counted at least 14 witnesses. 3 traffic cameras mounted on poles at the intersection. The Porsche's door opened with a grinding sound. A man stumbled out, pale, disoriented, phone still clutched in his hand. He was wearing designer sunglasses and a polo shirt that probably cost more than most people's car payments. His hair was disheveled from the airbag impact. His hands were trembling. He looked at the Rolls-Royce, at the damage, at the license plate, earned. "Oh God," he muttered. Oh God, who drives a Rolls-Royce in Phoenix?" He turned toward me and froze. I watched recognition dawn across his face like a slow-motion explosion. The color drained from his cheeks, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Hello, Derek," I said calmly. "It's been a while." My brother stared at me as if he'd seen a ghost. In a way, I suppose he had. Derek's voice came out as a croak. "Brianna, you're driving this?" I stood beside my damaged Rolls-Royce, arms crossed, watching my brother struggle to process what he was seeing. The contrast between us couldn't have been sharper. Him in his wrinkled polo, face pale with shock, me in my Armani suit, calm as still water. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm driving this." But how?" He gestured wildly at the car, at me, at the situation. "This is a Rolls-Royce. How much does this even cost?" $485,000. The number landed like a physical blow. Derek actually took a step backward. You can't." He was sputtering now. "You were working at some little car company. Sales or something, that's what Dad said." Dad was wrong about a lot of things. A crowd was gathering. I could see phones pointed at us, recording. Someone was already on the phone with 911. The traffic cameras continued their silent observation. Derek looked at the damage to his Porsche, then at the damage to my Rolls-Royce. Even in his shocked state, I could see him doing the math. His car was worth $128,000. Mine was worth nearly 4 times that, and he had just rear-ended me while speeding and, based on the phone still in his hand, texting. "I was going to call Dad," he said weakly. "He'll fix this. He always fixes everything." "Does he?" "What?" "Fix everything." I kept my voice level. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like some things are beyond fixing." In the distance, I heard sirens approaching. Derek's face went from pale to green. "You can't. You won't." He couldn't even finish the sentence. "Won't what, Derek? Tell the truth?" I glanced at the gathering crowd. "I think it's a little late for that." The police cruiser arrived at 2:55 p.m. Officer Daniel Torres stepped out. A stocky man in his early 40s with the weathered look of someone who'd seen every kind of traffic incident Phoenix could produce. He surveyed the scene with practiced efficiency, the crumpled Porsche, the damaged Rolls-Royce, the growing crowd of onlookers. "Everyone okay?" he asked, approaching us. "I'm fine," I said. "I was stopped at the red light when I was struck from behind." Torres nodded and turned to Derek. "Sir, any injuries?" Derek shook his head, still clutching his phone like a lifeline. "I'll need license and registration from both of you." Torres pulled out his notepad. "And I'll need statements about what happened." I retrieved my documents from the Rolls-Royce. Derek fumbled through his glove compartment, hands shaking. Torres examined the scene, taking photos, measuring skid marks, or rather, the lack of them. He checked the traffic camera angles. He noted the speed limit signs, 45 mph. "Sir," he said to Derek, "I'm showing you were traveling approximately 78 miles per hour in a 45 zone. And witnesses report you were looking at your phone at the time of impact." Derek's face contorted. "My father is Raymond Gallagher. He owns Gallagher Motors. He'll handle everything. I don't care if your father is the governor of Arizona." Torres's voice was flat. You were speeding, distracted, and you caused an accident. That's what my report will reflect. He turned to me. Ma'am, estimated damage to your vehicle? I looked at the crumpled rear end of my Phantom. Approximately $85,000, I said. I'll have it assessed properly, of course. Derek made a sound like a wounded animal. The Mercedes S-Class pulled up at 3:15 p.m. I recognized the car before I recognized the driver. It was the same vehicle my father had driven for years, his reasonable luxury, as he called it. Not flashy like a sports car. Dignified, appropriate for a man of his standing. Raymond Gallagher stepped out, already in full damage control mode. His face was flushed, his stride purposeful. He'd clearly received Derek's panicked phone call and rushed over expecting to smooth things out the way he always did. With money, with connections, with the weight of the Gallagher name. Derek! He rushed toward his son, checking him for injuries. Are you all right? What happened? I'm fine, Dad, but... Don't worry, I'll handle this. Raymond straightened his jacket and turned toward the Rolls-Royce. Now, who's the owner of this vehicle? I'm prepared to make this right. Full compensation, no questions asked. He scanned the crowd, looking for someone who matched his mental image of a Rolls-Royce owner. His eyes passed over me twice without stopping. Excuse me, he called out to no one in particular. Who owns this car? I'd like to speak with them directly. I stepped forward. Hello, Dad. Raymond Gallagher turned toward me. For 3 full seconds, he didn't speak. His mouth opened slightly. His eyes traveled from my face to my suit to the Rolls-Royce behind me and back again. Brianna? It's been a while. He pointed at the car. This is your... I'm the owner, I said calmly. And yes, this is my Rolls-Royce, the one your son just destroyed. The color drained from my father's face. For the first time in my life, I saw Raymond Gallagher completely speechless. It was more satisfying than I'd imagined. My father found his voice, though it came out strangled. How is this possible? You're supposed to be working in sales at a little car company? I reached into my jacket and pulled out a business card. Here. He took it with trembling fingers. Brianna Gallagher, Chief Operating Officer, Meridian Motors. COO? Raymond's voice cracked. Of that electric car startup, that company is valued at $340 million as of our last funding round. I kept my tone conversational, as if I were discussing the weather. Goldman Sachs led our Series C, it's public record. You can verify it with an internet search. Derek had edged closer, listening. 340 million? I own 8% equity, I continued. That's $27.2 million on paper. After 2 years of vesting, I've earned roughly half of that outright. I watched my father do the math. His lips moved silently. His face went from pale to gray. $27 million. He said it like a foreign phrase he didn't understand. Give or take. The crowd around us had grown. I could see phones raised, recording. A woman near the front was live streaming. The traffic cameras continued their silent documentation. And this car, I gestured at the Rolls-Royce. I bought with my own money, not a gift, not an inheritance, not a reward for simply existing. I paused. I earned it. Raymond stared at the license plate. Earned. The word seemed to physically wound him. You said women couldn't work in the automotive industry, I said quietly. You said customers didn't want to talk to us about cars. You gave Derek a Porsche because he was the future of the Gallagher legacy. I looked at my brother's crumpled sports car. How's that legacy looking now? Derek made a choking sound. My father swayed slightly on his feet. I didn't... He couldn't form a complete sentence. You told me to work harder, I said. So I did, and this is the result. Officer Torres cleared his throat. Ma'am, how would you like to proceed? The damage to your vehicle is substantial. You have the right to file charges for reckless driving, and your insurance claim is straightforward given the evidence. I looked at Derek. He was staring at the ground, shoulders hunched, all the bravado drained out of him. Then I looked at my father, still struggling to process the reality in front of him. "Let me make sure I understand the situation," I said, loud enough for the gathered crowd to hear. "My brother's Porsche is worth approximately $128,000. My Rolls-Royce is worth $485,000. The damage he caused is estimated at $85,000, plus additional costs for rental vehicles, time, and inconvenience." I turned to Derek. "You were speeding at 78 in a 45 zone. You were texting while driving. You rear-ended a stopped vehicle at a red light. All of this is documented by traffic cameras, witnesses, and Officer Torres's report." Derek's voice was barely a whisper. "Brianna, please." "Please what? Cover for you? Make this disappear?" I shook my head slowly. "That's what Dad always did, isn't it? Fixed your problems, erased your consequences, made sure you never had to face the results of your own choices." I stepped closer to my brother, close enough that only he could hear what I said next, though I said it loud enough for the microphones to catch. "Derek, based on these numbers and your current financial situation, you'll be working to pay this off for approximately 50 years. I paused. "Unless, of course, you want to ask Dad for help. But something tells me his resources might be more limited than you think." Behind me, I heard a sound, a gasp, then a thud. I turned around. My father was on the ground. Raymond Gallagher lay on the Phoenix asphalt, unconscious. For a moment, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. "Dad!" Derek rushed to his father's side, kneeling beside him. "Dad, wake up! Someone call an ambulance!" "Already on it," Officer Torres said, speaking into his radio. "Medical emergency at Camelback and 24th. Male, late 50s, collapsed. Possible cardiac event." I stood very still, watching the scene unfold. My father's face was pale, almost gray. His chest rose and fell. He was breathing, at least, but his eyes remained closed. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 myself, providing additional details to the dispatcher. My voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had learned to function in crisis. "I need an ambulance at the intersection of Camelback Road and 24th Street. A 58-year-old male has collapsed. He has a history of high blood pressure. He's breathing but unresponsive." The crowd had pulled back, giving space. Someone was filming, someone else was crying. Derek was shaking his father's shoulders, begging him to wake up. I didn't move toward them. I hadn't wanted this. I hadn't planned for my father to collapse on a public street surrounded by witnesses and cameras. I had simply told the truth about my success, about my car, about the consequences of Derek's actions. The truth had been too much for Raymond Gallagher to bear. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. As the paramedics loaded my father onto a stretcher, Derek looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Are you happy now?" he spat. I met his gaze without flinching. "No," I said quietly, "but I'm not sorry either." That moment, when my father collapsed, wasn't a victory. It was the consequence of 28 years of denial crashing into reality. If you're watching this and you've been overlooked by family, I want you to know, your worth doesn't depend on whether they see it. Comment and tell me, have you ever had to confront someone who underestimated you? And don't forget to subscribe to see how this story ends. Banner University Medical Center. 5:30 p.m. I sat in the waiting room on an uncomfortable plastic chair, still wearing my Armani suit, still carrying the acquisition documents I'd never had a chance to sign. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A television in the corner played the local news on mute. The doctors had diagnosed my father with acute hypertensive crisis, a sudden spike in blood pressure triggered by extreme stress. Not a heart attack, not life-threatening, but serious enough to require overnight observation and medication adjustments. I hadn't gone into his room. Derek emerged from the hallway, his eyes swollen, his polo shirt wrinkled beyond recognition. He stopped when he saw me. "You're still here." "I'm still here. I'm still." He slumped into a chair across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "The doctor says he'll be okay," Derek finally said. "He needs to rest, avoid stress." A bitter laugh escaped him. Avoid stress. Right. That's good news. Is it? He looked at me with something between anger and confusion. You show up out of nowhere in a $500,000 car, announce you're worth $27 million, and tell me I'll be working for 50 years to pay off the damage I caused. And Dad just collapses. I didn't make him collapse, Derek. The truth did. Same thing. No. I leaned forward. It's not the same thing at all. I spent 26 years being invisible in this family. I left with nothing. I built everything I have from scratch. And today, when I finally stood in front of you and Dad as the person I actually am, he couldn't handle it. Derek was silent. That's not my fault, I said quietly. That's his. He wants to see you, Derek muttered. He asked. I looked toward the hallway. I know. I stepped into the hallway and called Elena. I saw the news, she said immediately. There's already footage circulating online. Startup COO's brother crashes into her Rolls-Royce. It's trending in Phoenix. Of course it is. Brianna, you have an airtight case. Reckless driving, distracted driving, property damage. With the traffic camera footage and witness statements, you could pursue this aggressively. Derek would face criminal charges on top of civil liability. I leaned against the hospital wall, watching nurses pass by with clipboards and concerned expressions. I don't want to pursue it aggressively. What do you want? I thought about it. Really thought about it. What did I want from Derek? From my father? From this entire situation? I want accountability, I said finally. Not revenge. Accountability. Elena was quiet for a moment. What does that look like? Derek pays the $85,000 in damages himself. Not with Dad's money, his own money, or a loan in his own name. He completes 200 hours of community service, something related to traffic safety, and he writes a formal apology letter, notarized, acknowledging what he did. That's remarkably measured. I don't need to destroy him, Elena. I just need him to understand that actions have consequences. That's something our father never taught him. I'll draft the settlement agreement tonight. If Derek agrees, we can have this resolved within the week. Thank you. Brianna? Elena's voice softened. You're handling this with more grace than most people would. You know that, right? I looked through the window at the Phoenix skyline, the same skyline I'd watched from my childhood bedroom all those years ago. I'm not doing this for grace, I said. I'm doing it because I refuse to become the kind of person my father raised my brother to be. 8:00 p.m. I pushed open the door to my father's hospital room. Raymond Gallagher lay in the bed, connected to monitors that beeped softly in the dim light. He looked smaller than I remembered, older. The commanding presence that had dominated my childhood seemed to have shrunk beneath the hospital blanket. His eyes opened when he heard me enter. You came. I came. I pulled a chair to his bedside but didn't sit. I stood there looking down at the man who had shaped so much of my life through his disapproval. I didn't know, he said, his voice hoarse, about the company, about what you'd built. You didn't know because you never asked. He closed his eyes. I thought you were. I assumed. You assumed I was failing, because that's what you expected, what you wanted, maybe. I kept my voice steady. You gave Derek everything and gave me a bus pass because you believed that's what we each deserved. Brianna, I'm not finished. I gripped the back of the chair. I don't need your apology, Dad. I don't need you to suddenly see my value because you've been confronted with evidence you can't ignore. I needed you to see it 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago when you handed me that bus pass in front of 45 people. Raymond's monitors beeped faster. A nurse glanced through the window. I built my success without your approval, I continued, lowering my voice. And I don't need your approval now. What I need is for you to understand that I will never again wait for you to decide I'm worthy. He looked at me with something I'd never seen before in his eyes. It might have been regret. It was too late for it to matter. The video went viral within 48 hours. Someone in the crowd had captured everything. The crash, the confrontation, my father's collapse. They'd uploaded it to TikTok with the caption, "Woman gets bus pass while brother gets Porsche." 2 years later, he crashes into her Rolls-Royce. By Monday morning, it had 2.3 million views. The Arizona Republic ran a story. Meridian Motors COO involved in Phoenix collision. Driver was her own brother. The article detailed my rise from back-office administrator to C-suite executive, my equity stake, the company's $340 million valuation. It painted a picture of a woman who had left everything behind and built an empire. Comments flooded in by the thousands. "This is the most satisfying karma I've ever seen." Her dad really said, "Work harder," and she said, "Bet." The license plate says, "Earned." I'm crying. The attention wasn't all positive. Some people called me cold for not rushing to my father's side. Others questioned whether the confrontation had been staged. A few accused me of using the situation for publicity, but the numbers didn't lie. Gallagher Motors saw an 18% drop in sales the following month. Customers who'd valued the family business image suddenly had questions about what kind of family the Gallaghers really were. 2 longtime employees quietly submitted resignations. Meanwhile, Meridian Motors received a surge of inquiries. Our Phoenix expansion, which I'd delayed by a week to deal with the aftermath, was now generating more buzz than any marketing campaign could have achieved. Elena called me on Wednesday. "The settlement is ready. Derek agreed to all terms. He's taking out a personal loan for the $85,000. Community service starts next month." "Good. Brianna, you won. You know that, right?" I looked out my office window at the Los Angeles skyline. I know. Derek's new reality hit him like a freight train. The Porsche was totaled. Insurance covered some of it, but after the payout, he walked away with $42,000, barely enough to cover half the damages he owed me. He had to take out a personal loan for the remaining $43,000 at 8.5% interest, in his own name. For the first time in his life, Derek Gallagher had debt. My father, still recovering from his hospital stay, refused to bail him out. "You need to learn," Raymond had reportedly said. "Your sister did. Maybe it's time you did too." Whether this was genuine growth or simply self-preservation in the face of public scrutiny, I couldn't say. Either way, the result was the same. Derek was on his own. His director of development title vanished. The position had always been a fiction, and now there was no one willing to maintain the pretense. Derek was reassigned to the sales floor at the Tempe dealership, working alongside the employees he'd once looked down upon. New salary, $45,000 per year plus commission. The same amount I'd earned when I left. The cruelest irony came 2 weeks later, when Derek's replacement vehicle, a used Honda Civic, broke down on his way to work. He had to take the bus. He texted me that night. "I'm sorry. I mean it. I was wrong about everything." I read the message 3 times. Then I set my phone aside without responding. Not because I was cruel. Not because I wanted him to suffer. But because I'd learned something important over the past 2 years. Forgiveness is a process, not an event. And I wasn't ready to begin that process yet. Some apologies need time to prove they're real. Derek would have to earn my response. March 18th, 2024. 3 days after the accident. I sat in the conference room at Morrison & Associates, the same law firm where I'd originally been scheduled to sign. Across the table sat the former owner of Desert Valley Motors, a mid-sized dealership on Camelback Road. The purchase price, $4.2 million. The location? 3 blocks from my father's flagship dealership. "Ms. Gallagher," the seller said, sliding the documents across the table, "I have to admit, after everything that happened this week, I wasn't sure you'd still want to proceed." "Business is business," I said, picking up the pen. "Personal circumstances don't change market fundamentals." I signed my name on the final page. Brianna Gallagher, COO, Meridian Motors. The seller shook my hand. "You know, I've been in this industry for 30 years. I've seen a lot of people come and go, but I've never seen anyone handle a situation like yours with such composure." Thank you. Your father and I go way back, he added, almost hesitantly. We've competed for decades. I always thought the Gallagher family had it all figured out. He paused. Turns out, I was looking at the wrong Gallagher. Marcus flew in that afternoon to celebrate. We stood in front of the empty showroom that would soon become Meridian Motors Phoenix, the first premium electric vehicle dealership in the region. You did it, he said. You came back to the place that rejected you and planted your flag. It's just business. No, it's not, he smiled. It's proof. Proof that the people who underestimate you are making the biggest mistake of their lives. The local news covered the acquisition that evening. Meridian Motors expands to Arizona, led by Phoenix native who left with nothing and returned with everything. The headline wasn't wrong. 1 week later, my mother called. Brianna? Her voice was different this time. Stronger, less apologetic. I need to tell you something. I was in my Los Angeles office, watching the sunset paint the city gold. I'm listening. I'm proud of you. I should have said it years ago. I should have said it when you graduated, when you got that job, when you left. She paused. I was too afraid of your father to stand up for you. That was wrong. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Thank you, Mom. I'm coming to visit you, next month. I've already bought the ticket. Another pause. Your father doesn't know. I didn't ask his permission. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I smiled at something my mother said. I'd like that. Brianna, your father is different now, since the hospital, since everything came out. He's quieter. He asks about you sometimes, not to criticize, just to know. I considered this. The man who had dismissed me for 26 years, suddenly curious about my life. That's his journey to take, I said carefully. But it doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't mean I owe him a relationship. I know, I'm not asking you to forgive him, I'm just telling you. I appreciate that. We talked for another 20 minutes, about her garden, about the weather in Phoenix, about the TV shows she'd been watching. Normal things, mother-daughter things. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. Not for my father. That bridge might never be rebuilt. But for my mother, finally finding her own voice after decades of silence. Some relationships can be salvaged, others can only be released. Wisdom is knowing the difference. March 2025, 1 year after the accident. I stood in the showroom of Meridian Motors Phoenix watching customers test drive vehicles that represented the future of transportation. The dealership had exceeded every projection, $12 million in revenue during its first year, making it our highest performing new location. My title had changed again. I was now president of the Southwest region, overseeing operations in Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Albuquerque. My equity stake, after 3 years of vesting, had grown to 6%, worth $20.4 million at current valuation. The numbers still felt surreal sometimes, but they were real, documented, verified. Derek had made progress on his debt. He'd paid off $28,000 of the $43,000 loan, working 6 days a week on the sales floor. His community service was complete, 200 hours at a local driving safety program, teaching teenagers about the consequences of distracted driving. He texted me occasionally, updates on his life, apologies that seemed increasingly genuine. I'd started responding, briefly, carefully. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. Raymond had retired early, citing health concerns. The stress of the public scandal, combined with his hospital stay, had taken a visible toll. Derek now ran the family dealership, though sales remained down 12% from their peak. My mother had visited 3 times. She'd seen my apartment, my office, my car. She'd cried when she saw the license plate, earned, and hugged me for a long time without saying anything. I always knew you'd do something extraordinary, she'd whispered. I just wish I'd said it when it mattered. "You're saying it now," I'd replied. "That matters too." The family I'd been born into had failed me, but the life I'd built was entirely my own, and that, I'd learned, was the only kind of success that truly lasts. I kept a journal throughout everything. Looking back at those entries now, I can trace the evolution of my thinking. October 2022. I'm not doing this to spite Dad. I'm doing it to save myself. April 2023. Marcus offered me equity today. Equity in a company worth $180 million. I had to read the contract 3 times to believe it was real. March 2024. Dad collapsed when he saw who I'd become. I don't feel victorious. I feel tired and free. March 2025. I don't hate my father. I don't hate Derek. I just don't need them anymore. And that's the most liberating thing I've ever felt. The bus pass still sits in a drawer in my apartment. I kept it as a reminder, not of the insult, but of the turning point. The moment I stopped waiting for permission to live my own life. I've learned things over these 3 years that no business school could teach. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. I choose who gets to walk through them. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up, who believes in you, who celebrates your wins without needing to diminish them. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't something you give because someone asks for it. It's something you offer when you're ready, on your own timeline, for your own peace. I'm not ready to forgive my father yet. Maybe I never will be. But I've stopped carrying the weight of his disapproval. I've set it down somewhere on the road between Phoenix and Los Angeles, and I have no intention of picking it up again. That's not revenge, that's freedom. And freedom, I've discovered, is worth more than any Rolls-Royce. The Rolls-Royce glides down the highway, fully repaired, as beautiful as the day I bought it. I'm heading back to Los Angeles after a quarterly review at the Phoenix dealership. The desert stretches out on either side of me, endless and ancient, indifferent to the small dramas of human families. The license plate still reads earned. I considered changing it after everything that happened, but decided against it. The word means more now than it did before. My phone buzzes, a text from Derek. "Bree, I know I've said it before, but I really am sorry. For everything. Not just the accident, for all of it. For the years I took Dad's side without thinking, for the jokes I laughed at, for never once asking what your life was like. I was wrong, and I'm trying to be better." I read the message twice, then I type a response. "I know you are. Keep going. It's not forgiveness. But it's a door, cracked open just slightly. The sun is setting over the Arizona mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I turn on the jazz station, Miles Davis again, and let the music fill the cabin. My father told me to work harder, so I did. He told me I'd never succeed in the automotive industry, so I became a leader in it. He gave me a bus pass while giving my brother a Porsche, so I bought a Rolls-Royce with money I earned myself. And now, I'm driving toward a life I built on my own terms, with boundaries I set myself, toward a future no one can take from me. That's the real victory. Not the car, not the money, not even the look on my father's face when he finally saw the truth. The victory is this: I am finally, completely, unapologetically free. Thank you for watching my story to the end. If you've ever been overlooked or treated unfairly, I want you to know your worth doesn't depend on whether others see it. Build your life on your own terms. If this resonated with you, please subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories like this. Check the description for another story about a woman who found her strength in the most unexpected way. What did you learn from this story? I read every comment and would love to hear from you.